say goodbye to your medical aids because the NHI is here.
The Portfolio Committee in Parliament is pushing this through, whether you want it or not.
And what does that actually mean for you? Well, in essence, the NHI wants to phase out private medical aid in South Africa so that every single citizen of this country gets to have the same quality treatment that the public hospitals offer.
So what it actually means is that the NHI allows the government to control the funds from which services through the hospital centres are purchased. Now, currently, that will be through state hospitals and government hospitals. Any service provider will basically be paid for by the fund. The idea being that as members of the state or as citizens of the state, all of our medical services will be controlled by the fund. The fund will set the pricing. The pricing will then be paid to the doctors. The fund will be centrally controlled and will be responsible for paying the doctors.
Yeah, but most importantly, the NHI is sort of the greatest centralization of funds in this country by far. It needs 250 billion rand to run, 250 billion rand under the Department of Health, and that's going to pay for every syringe, every doctor's appointment, every surgery's bill, every swab, basically everything that has to do with healthcare in this country. So don't worry, you're not going to pay for it. They'll increase your taxes to do that. But don't worry, all your bills will be paid by the state. Now, Byron, if I remember correctly, this already sort of happens. It's called the public health sector in South Africa, and as far as I understand, it's not great.
No, we can look at the Tembisa tender scenario. Basically, is a government hospital which has been used to pay the cadres. When we say pay the cadres, well, Tembisa is rather famous for inflating invoices up to 2,000% on the cost margins, submitting invoices that don't really exist for services that don't really exist and were never provided, and all of these services have been paid to ANC cadres. Any kind of incentive not to steal from that existing fund, it's not existent.
Just over the weekend in Mafeking, yes, I call it by its colonial name, there were babies in cardboard boxes because guess what? They ran out of incubators. Welcome to South Africa, where we used incubators before we used cardboard.
The question you have to ask yourself is, where does this leave private medical aids? Because let us remind ourselves that providers such as Discovery actually backed the NHI, despite numerous NGOs such as the IRR and to a large degree even AfriForum and even the DA telling all of these private medical entities this was a bad idea. You don't really want to push the NHI because it will render you obsolete. But in typical fashion, they ignored the advice on the basis that possibly they could get some of the lucre, right? They could be involved in the patronage work if they were given the actual thing to manage, not realizing that the beast they're dealing with isn't interested in sharing power. So now what you find is that now that we're on the eve of NHI being adopted, all of the private medicals are starting to worry. The NHI in its full glory says private medical aids will cease to exist. All funds will have to be provided through the NHI fund. The NHI fund will have sole exclusivity of purchasing medical services around the country, setting the pricing and being responsible for paying for those services once they're provided.
The NHI is nothing more than the stealth expropriation of medical aids across the board. And Byron, you're correct. The medical aids should have started to fight this back in 2009 when it was first proposed by the Bill Gates Foundation. But they didn't do that. Go back. Go see what Adrian Gore, the CEO of Discovery, has said about the NHI. He welcomes the idea of the NHI. He even called it morally necessary in South Africa. Interesting. These things and the dogma of the ANC go through because no one has the balls to stop them when they are shut out at an ANC policy conference. And now all the medical aids and medical insurances are shitting themselves because they didn't put up a fight whatsoever.
Time and time again, the ANC puts forward policies that frankly are bullshit. But they're put forward because their policy conferences are deeply ideological. And the ANC itself understands that a lot of these policies are not popular with the country at large. They know what we know because they see the same polling data that we see. They know what is popular to the electorate. But they also know what is popular internally. When it comes through to medical aids, you cannot tell me that the ANC are not benefiting from private medical, because the ANC, as members of parliament, actually get private medicals paid for by the taxpayer. They know what a private medical looks like versus a state hospital. But that pot of money, Ramon, that you've mentioned there, that very deep pot, looks too appealing to the ANC cadre. So as a result, they can all think to themselves, right, it sounds good if we say, well, we want universal healthcare. See, it doesn't sound so bad, right? But we want to manage the funds. And we know the minute we get our hands on the till, money's going to go missing, huh? And it's going to be a little bit like the COVID 500 billion. Not a cent will go missing. We will account for all of it, unless you mean all of it, in which case we don't know where any of it went.
Yeah, that is the NHI in a nutshell. And my sources tell me that really the ANC doesn't sort of want the NHI to go through. It was an idea developed in 2007 at the Polokwane conference when Jacob Zuma was nominated to be the president of the ANC. And it sort of has never died. And the reason it's going through is because these sort of things build inertia. And the problem with inertia is you need some pushback against it to prevent it from developing even further. But throughout this entire process, the big medical insurance companies, the big medical aids, no one has really ever said NHI is a shit idea and we're going to fund a huge campaign against it. No one has done that other than the IRR and the DA. And unfortunately, this only dies if the industry affected kills it. And to date, the industry has not, and therefore NHI will become a reality sooner rather than later.
Yes, but do not give up hope, ladies and gentlemen, because the whole bill around NHI is deeply unconstitutional. And so the minute it's passed, and inevitably it will be passed, because the ANC wills it to be so, it will be in the Constitutional Court for the next 100 million years, whilst everybody argues the legitimacy of the bill itself. Is that going to stop the ANC implementing stage 1 of the NHI? No, because what the ANC really want to do is get their hands on the funds. And that's what stage 1 is. It's them stealing the funds. Will it actually get further than that? I sincerely doubt it. With that all being said, didn't even have to get this far, Ramon. What really had to happen is that business, which we argue time and time again needs to grow a backbone in this country, fight all of these tyrannical rules. We see these things come up time and time again, and everybody's silent until the last hour.